Growing up, I always believed my sister Madison was the golden child who could do no wrong. She was 4 years older, beautiful, and seemed to have this magical ability to make everyone love her instantly. When I got engaged to Jason 2 years ago, Madison was the first person I called. She cried happy tears and promised to help make my wedding day perfect. We had just bought our dream house together and everything was falling into place. Jason and I planned to get married in our backyard in just 2 months. I trusted Madison completely. I had no idea she was planning to steal more than just my spotlight. Before I tell you this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button if you have ever trusted the wrong person, and subscribe because you will not believe how this ends. Now let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Stella, and at 28 years old I thought I had my life figured out. I worked as a marketing coordinator in Denver, had been with my fiance Jason for 3 years, and we had just purchased a beautiful 2-story house in the suburbs for $250,000. Jason worked as a construction manager, and together we made a decent living that allowed us to buy our first home. Madison was 32 and had always been the family favorite. Our parents constantly praised her achievements while treating mine as expected rather than celebrated. 6 months before my engagement party, Madison had gone through a messy divorce with her ex-husband Timothy. According to her, they simply were not compatible anymore, and our family immediately rallied around her with support and sympathy. When Jason proposed, Madison seemed genuinely excited for us. She hugged me tight and said she was so happy that at least one of us had found true love. I felt grateful to have such a supportive sister, especially since she had been through her own romantic troubles recently. She knew how much this wedding meant to me. We planned to have the ceremony in the backyard of our new house. The property was perfect for it, with mature oak trees and a large lawn that could accommodate our 75 guests. I was handling most of the planning myself, but the stress was beginning to show. That's when Madison stepped in with her offer to help. "Let me help you plan, sis," she said during one of our coffee dates. "I know how stressful this can be, and you should not have to do everything alone." Her offer seemed so genuine and caring that I immediately accepted. Looking back, I realized this was when she began gathering information about every detail of my life with Jason. Madison started coming over to the house frequently, always with some excuse related to wedding planning. She would arrive with fabric samples for table runners or different flower arrangements to consider. Jason was often home working on house projects, and Madison would always greet him with enthusiasm. "You are working so hard on this house," she would tell him, bringing homemade sandwiches or coffee. Stella is so lucky to have someone who cares about creating the perfect home for her. At first, Jason seemed uncomfortable with all the attention. He would politely thank her and try to continue his work. But gradually I noticed he began engaging more in conversations with her. They would discuss the renovations he was doing, and Madison always had encouraging words about his craftsmanship and vision. I started noticing small changes that made me feel uneasy. Madison seemed to know Jason's work schedule better than I did sometimes. She would mention that he had a late job site meeting when I had not even been told about it yet. When I asked Jason about it, he would say he had forgotten to mention it or thought he had already told me. Madison also began dressing differently when she came to visit. Instead of her usual casual clothes, she started wearing fitted dresses and taking more care with her makeup. She would laugh louder at Jason's jokes and find excuses to touch his arm when talking to him. My best friend Harmony started expressing concerns during our weekly lunch meetings. "Something feels off about this whole thing," she told me. "Madison is spending a lot of time at your house, and she seems way too interested in Jason's opinions about everything." I defended Madison at first. "She is just being helpful," I would say. "She wants my wedding to be perfect, and she knows Jason's input matters since it is his day too." But deep down, a small voice in my head was starting to question whether Madison's motives were as pure as they seemed. The uncomfortable feeling grew stronger when I noticed Madison had started commenting on social media posts about our relationship more frequently. She would write things like, "Such a beautiful couple," and "Jason treats you like a queen," but something about the tone felt wrong. It was as if she was studying us rather than simply supporting us. Everything changed on a Tuesday afternoon in late spring. I had been on a work trip to Colorado Springs for 3 days, presenting a marketing campaign to a potential client. The meetings finished earlier than expected, so I decided to drive home and surprise Jason instead of staying the extra night as originally planned. When I pulled into our driveway at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I was confused to see Madison's silver Honda parked next to Jason's truck. This was strange because Jason had told me he would be at a job site all day, and Madison had mentioned she had appointments scheduled. I sat in my car for a moment, trying to think of reasonable explanations for why they would both be at my house in the middle of a weekday. I used my spare key to enter through the side door, quietly, not wanting to startle them if they were working on wedding preparations. But as I stepped into the kitchen, I could hear voices coming from the living room. They were not discussing flower arrangements or seating charts. Instead, I heard Madison's distinctive laugh, the kind she used when she was flirting with someone. My heart began pounding as I crept closer to the doorway. What I saw made my blood turn to ice. Jason and Madison were sitting extremely close together on our sofa, her hand resting on his thigh, while his arm was wrapped around her shoulders. They were looking into each other's eyes with an intimacy that made me feel like I was intruding on something private and forbidden. "We cannot keep hiding this forever, Jason," Madison was saying softly. "Stella deserves to know the truth about how we feel about each other." Jason's response hit me like a physical blow. "Just give me more time," he replied. "I do not want to hurt her right before the wedding. Maybe after the honeymoon we can figure out how to tell her gently." I stood frozen in the doorway, unable to process what I was hearing. My sister and my fiance were having an affair, and they were discussing how to break the news to me after I had already married him. The betrayal was so complete and calculated that I felt like I might collapse. I must have made some noise because suddenly both of them looked up and saw me standing there. The color drained from both of their faces, and Madison immediately jumped away from Jason as if she had been burned. "Stella!" Madison exclaimed, trying to arrange her face into an innocent expression. "You are home early. We were just planning a surprise for you." Her voice was higher than usual, and she was clearly panicking. Jason struggled to find words, opening and closing his mouth like a fish out of water. "I can explain," he finally managed to say, but we all knew there was no explanation that could make this situation acceptable. "How long has this been going on?" I demanded, my voice surprisingly steady, despite the chaos in my mind. I needed to know the full extent of their deception. Madison and Jason exchanged glances clearly, trying to decide how much truth to reveal. Finally, Madison took a deep breath and said, 3 months. We could not help it, Stella. Sometimes love just happens, and you cannot control who you fall for. 3 months. While I had been planning our wedding, choosing flowers and dreaming about our future, together my sister had been seducing my fiance behind my back. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical pain I had ever experienced, but Madison was not finished destroying my world. She looked down at her hands and then back up at me with what appeared to be genuine remorse. "And there is something else you need to know," she said quietly. "I am pregnant." The room seemed to spin around me. "Pregnant," I whispered. Jason nodded miserably. "It is mine," he confirmed, unable to meet my eyes. I felt like I was falling into a dark hole with no bottom. Not only had they been having an affair, but they had created a child together. The future I had planned, the family I had dreamed of building with Jason, had been stolen from me and given to my sister. Madison tried to justify their actions with manipulation disguised as concern. "We did not plan this, Stella," she said. reaching out as if to touch my arm. But now we have to think about what is best for the baby. Children need stable, loving homes with parents who truly love each other. When I called our parents that evening to tell them what had happened, their reaction was the final nail in the coffin of my faith in family loyalty. Instead of being horrified by Madison's betrayal, they immediately shifted into protective mode around her. "She needs support now, Stella," my mother said. "This is a difficult situation for everyone, but Madison is carrying your nephew or niece. You have to understand that changes everything." My father was even more blunt. "Jason made his choice," he told me. "You need to accept it and move on. Madison did not set out to hurt you, but sometimes these things just happen. She's going to be a single mother now, and she needs her family." I felt completely isolated. Even my own parents had chosen Madison's side without considering how devastating this betrayal was for me. I realized that I had been the outsider in my own family for my entire life, and this situation had simply made it impossible to ignore anymore. 1 week after discovering the affair, I thought my life could not get any worse. I was wrong. Madison showed up at my front door on a Saturday morning with a determined expression that I had learned to recognize from childhood. She was about to ask for something that she expected to receive without question. "We need to talk," she announced, walking into my house without waiting for an invitation. "Jason and I have been discussing our situation, and we have come to a decision about the house." I stared at her, wondering how she could possibly have anything to say about the house that Jason and I owned together. But Madison had always been confident in her ability to get what she wanted, and pregnancy had only increased her sense of entitlement. "Jason and I need the house, Stella," she stated matter-of-factly. "We are starting a family, and we need stability and space for the baby. You are young and single now, so you can find a nice apartment somewhere. This house was meant to be a family home, and that is exactly what it will be." The audacity of her demand left me speechless for several seconds. Not only had she stolen my fiance and gotten pregnant with his child, but now she wanted to take the home I had worked so hard to buy. She was attempting to completely erase me from the life I had built. "I am pregnant and need stability," Madison continued, placing her hand on her still flat stomach for emphasis. "You will bounce back from this. You are stronger than you think, and you have your whole life ahead of you to find someone new and start over." When I did not immediately respond, Madison's tone became more demanding. "This is not just about us anymore, Stella. There is an innocent baby to consider. Do not be selfish about this." Jason arrived an hour later, looking uncomfortable, but clearly having been coached by Madison on what to say. "Maybe it would be easier if you found somewhere else to live," he suggested weakly. "We could work out some kind of financial arrangement." That evening, I sat alone in the house that was supposed to be the foundation of my married life, trying to process how quickly everything had fallen apart. But as the shock began to wear off, anger started taking its place. I was tired of being pushed around and expected to quietly accept whatever scraps my family decided to throw me. I spent the next few days doing research. I pulled out all the paperwork from our home purchase and studied every document carefully. What I discovered gave me the first spark of hope I had felt since this nightmare began. The house was registered solely under my name. Jason's name did not appear anywhere on the deed or mortgage documents. When we had applied for the loan, his credit score had been too low to qualify, so I had purchased the house independently with my own finances and creditworthiness. I made an appointment with a real estate lawyer to confirm my legal position. "You have complete ownership of this property," the attorney explained. "Your ex-fiance has no legal claim to the house whatsoever. You can do whatever you want with it, including selling it or asking him to leave." Armed with this knowledge, I began formulating a plan. If Madison wanted to play games and manipulate situations to her advantage, I would show her that two could play that game. but I would be smarter about it than she had been. I also discovered something interesting during my research. Madison had been looking up property records and real estate laws online. Her search history on the family computer showed that she had been investigating my legal ownership of the house. This meant her demand was not made in ignorance. It was a calculated attempt to intimidate me into giving up what was rightfully mine. Over the next several days, I made phone calls to real estate agents and got estimates on the current market value of my house. The property had appreciated significantly since I bought it, and agents estimated it could sell for around $300,000. This represented a $50,000 profit that would give me a fresh start somewhere new. Madison called me repeatedly, becoming increasingly aggressive when I did not immediately cave to her demands. "I cannot believe you are being so stubborn about this," she said during one particularly heated conversation. "Think about the baby Stella. Do not be selfish." I decided it was time to implement my plan. I called Madison and asked her to come over for a conversation. When she arrived, I put on my best performance. "You are right," I told her with a resigned sigh. "Family should come first, and there is an innocent baby involved now. I have been selfish, and I am sorry for that." Madison's face lit up with triumph. "I knew you would come around," she said smugly. "You have always been reasonable, even when you are upset." "Jason and you can have the house," I continued. "I will start looking for an apartment this week and be moved out within a month." Madison hugged me tightly, and I had to resist the urge to push her away. "Thank you for understanding," she said. "This is what is best for everyone." We arranged for Madison and Jason to come by the following Saturday with a moving truck so they could begin settling into their new home. Madison spent the week shopping for baby furniture and making plans for how she would decorate the nursery. Saturday morning arrived and I was ready for them. I had spent the previous day cleaning the house from top to bottom and making sure everything looked perfect. When Madison and Jason pulled up with their rented truck, I was waiting on the front porch with my biggest smile. "Welcome to your new home," I called out cheerfully as they approached the front door. Madison looked suspicious. "You seem awfully happy about this," she said cautiously. "I thought you would be more upset about leaving." "Oh, I am happy," I replied, barely able to contain my excitement. "I am incredibly happy because yesterday I sold the house." The color drained from Madison's face. "What do you mean you sold the house?" she demanded. "I mean exactly what I said," I explained calmly. "The house sold yesterday afternoon for $300,000. The new owners will be here in about an hour to take possession of their property." Madison began screaming. "You cannot do this. I am pregnant. We have a lease agreement." "Actually, we do not have any agreement at all," I corrected her. "And yes, I absolutely can do this because the house belongs entirely to me. Jason's name is not on any legal documents." Jason looked panicked. "Where are we supposed to live now?" he asked desperately. I shrugged. "That is not my problem anymore," I said. "You two figured out how to plan an affair and get pregnant behind my back. I am sure you can figure out your housing situation." As if on cue, a car pulled into the driveway. The new owners had arrived early to walk through their new home one final time before taking possession. I greeted them warmly and handed over the keys. Madison was having a complete breakdown on my front lawn. "You have ruined everything," she sobbed. "How could you do this to your own family?" "The same way you could steal my fiance and get pregnant with his baby," I replied evenly. "I learned from watching you that family loyalty only goes one way in this house." My parents arrived within the hour, having been called by a hysterical Madison. They were outraged by my actions and demanded that I find a way to undo the sale. "How could you do this to your pregnant sister?" my mother shouted. "She has nowhere to go." "She can go back to living with you and Dad," I suggested. "Just like when she was a child, and you solved all her problems for her." My father was furious. "This is vindictive and cruel, Stella. We raised you better than this." "No," I corrected him firmly. "You raised Madison to believe she could take whatever she wanted from other people without consequences. You raised me to be the one who gives up everything so she can be happy. I am done with that dynamic." As I walked away from the chaos on my former front lawn, I heard Madison screaming that I had destroyed her life. But for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. I had protected myself, and I had refused to be a victim. The immediate aftermath was brutal. Madison and Jason were forced to move in with our parents, turning their quiet retirement home into a chaotic, multi-generational household. My parents' marriage began showing strain under the pressure of housing two unemployed adults and preparing for a new baby. Jason's construction business suffered because the drama affected his focus and reputation. Word spreads quickly in small communities, and clients began questioning his reliability and character. Madison, meanwhile, struggled with pregnancy symptoms while living in her childhood bedroom, feeling like her life had gone backward instead of forward. But I was finally free. I used the profit from the house sale to rent a modern apartment in downtown Denver, closer to my work and far from the suburban neighborhood where everyone knew about the scandal. For the first time in my adult life, I was living entirely on my own terms. The first few weeks were admittedly lonely. I had to process not just the betrayal by Jason and Madison, but also the realization that my parents had never truly supported me. I started seeing a therapist who helped me understand that I had been conditioned from childhood to sacrifice my own needs for Madison's happiness. "You were trained to be the giver in every relationship," my therapist explained. "Your family dynamic taught you that your role was to make everyone else comfortable, even at the expense of your own well-being." Slowly, I began rebuilding my life with intention and purpose. I reconnected with friends I had neglected while planning my wedding, including my best friend Harmony, who had tried to warn me about Madison's behavior. I also discovered new interests and hobbies that I had never had time to explore when I was focused on pleasing other people. I started taking photography classes on weekends and joined a hiking group that explored Colorado's beautiful mountains. Cooking became a creative outlet rather than a chore, and I found joy in preparing meals just for myself, without worrying about anyone else's preferences. 6 months after the house sale, I heard through mutual friends that Madison and Jason's relationship was falling apart. Living with my parents had created constant tension, and they were struggling financially with the upcoming baby expenses. Madison had begun blaming Jason for the loss of the house, conveniently forgetting that the affair had been her idea. "You promised me that house," she reportedly told him during arguments. "You said everything would work out perfectly, and now I am stuck living with my parents like a teenager." Jason attempted to contact me several times, sending text messages that I immediately blocked. According to Harmony, he was telling people that he had made a terrible mistake and regretted throwing away what we had built together. But I felt nothing when I heard this news. The man I had loved no longer existed, if he ever had. My career flourished in my new environment. Without the stress of wedding planning and relationship drama, I was able to focus completely on my work. I received a promotion to senior marketing coordinator and began leading campaigns for major clients. The confidence I had gained from standing up for myself translated into professional success. 8 months after everything fell apart, I met Colin at a coffee shop near my apartment. He was an architect working on a sustainable housing project, and we struck up a conversation about urban development and environmental design. What impressed me most about Colin was his genuine interest in my opinions and his respect for my boundaries. Colin knew about my past because I was honest about why I was hesitant to trust people quickly. Instead of trying to rush our relationship or convince me that he was different. He simply showed me through consistent actions that he was trustworthy. He understood that I needed time to heal and did not pressure me to move faster than I was comfortable with. My relationship with my parents slowly began to improve, but only after they witnessed the consequences of their favoritism toward Madison. When the baby was born, they found themselves providing full-time childcare because Madison struggled with postpartum depression and Jason had left town for a construction job in another state. "We were wrong to take sides the way we did," my mother finally admitted during a careful phone conversation. "We should have supported you too instead of assuming you would just accept everything." My father was more direct in his apology. "We enabled Madison's behavior for too long," he said. "We thought we were protecting her, but we were actually making her weaker and teaching her that actions do not have consequences." I appreciated their acknowledgement of their mistakes, but I maintained careful boundaries with them. I was willing to have a relationship, but it would be on my terms, and it would not involve sacrificing my own well-being for family harmony. Madison and I have not spoken directly since the day I sold the house. I occasionally receive updates through family members, and I know that she is raising her daughter as a single mother while living with our parents. Jason disappeared completely after the baby was born, leaving Madison to handle parenthood alone. Sometimes I wonder if I could have handled the situation differently, but I always come back to the same conclusion. Madison and Jason made their choices knowing full well that their actions would devastate me. I simply refused to be a victim of their selfishness. The most important lesson I learned is that protecting yourself is not selfish. It is survival. Family relationships should be based on mutual respect and love, not on one person's willingness to accept mistreatment for the sake of peace. I also learned to trust my instincts. When something feels wrong in a relationship, it usually is wrong. The small warning signs I ignored about Madison's behavior were actually my intuition trying to protect me from a much larger betrayal. Today, I live in a beautiful apartment that I chose and decorated entirely according to my own taste. I have a career that challenges me, friends who respect me, and a relationship with Colin that is built on honesty and mutual support. Most importantly, I have self-respect and the knowledge that I will never again allow anyone to treat me as less than I deserve. Would I change anything about what happened? Maybe I would have trusted my instincts sooner and confronted the situation before it went as far as it did. But every betrayal taught me something valuable about who I really am and what I am capable of when I stand up for myself. I lost a sister, a fiance, and temporarily my parents' support, but I gained self-respect, true friends, and peace of mind. Some relationships are not worth saving, especially when they require you to diminish yourself to make other people comfortable. The house was just a building made of wood and brick. My dignity and self-worth were priceless, and I was not willing to sell them at any price. Sometimes losing everything you thought you wanted is the only way to discover who you really are and what you actually need to be happy. And sometimes the best revenge is simply living well and refusing to let other people's choices define your future. Let me ask you something. Have you ever had to choose between keeping peace in your family and protecting yourself? How did you handle betrayal from someone you trusted completely? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because I would love to hear your stories. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming betrayal and finding your strength. Share this with someone who might need to hear that they deserve better than accepting mistreatment for the sake of family harmony. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that your peace of mind is worth more than anyone else's convenience. Until next time, keep choosing yourself.